Hi, Dr. Rudy Kachmann. Thank you for watching the show today, which is about stopping, preventing, reversing diabetes. Kind of important, which is a very common chronic disease. Probably, if correctly tested, I would say 70 to 80% of the people have it, but maybe 50% know it, but the other 20, 30% never had the proper test to see it. And it's not a blood sugar. It's a serum insulin test. And I'll explain that to you in great detail. Well, I sort of got onto this many years ago. I read a book, and I'd like you to have a look at it. You can read this a night or two, three. Most doctors could read it in one night. Diabetes Epidemic and You. Should everyone be tested? Remember I spoke about tests? Absolutely not. Only those concerned about their future. But my point is 30 to 40 diseases associated with diabetes. So I know how to teach you how to stop it, prevent it, reverse it 90% of the time. Not hard. So let's get on the road. Okay, let's play this game together. Joseph Kraft, K-R-A-F-T, was from the University of Illinois, and he ran research. He was a pathologist. He looked at the bottom line. He looked at dead bodies and through slides in the microscope, and he saw what diabetes did to you. We studied probably 1,200 people. That intrigued him so much that he then studied live human beings. About 14,000 other doctors worked with them, and they ran blood sugars and insulin studies, and all that's very explained in great detail in here. And he studied them from age 3 to age 90. Yeah, I think this is important. Children today, what are the family doctors, pediatricians check kids' blood sugars starting at age 10 or so. They run HbA1cs. They need to study them long before that. When I was walking through a food market recently, I saw a lot of children buying sugary foods, drinking sugary drinks, who already looked unhealthy. And thin people can have diabetes, so it's important to get your blood sugar checked even if you're thin. But if you're overweight, 95% chance you get diabetes. Your blood sugar may be normal. That doesn't mean a thing to me. Well, I've had glucose tolerance tests. I swallowed 75 grams of sugar. They check my blood fasting 1 hour, 2 hours, and that's normal. That still doesn't prove it to me. But if you had fasting insulin, 1 hour, 2 hour insulins, and that was normal, you're not diabetic. But you got to prove it to me. The blood test is the bottom line. And the scientific proof is right in that book. I rarely meet a doctor. I never met a diabetic doctor ever read that book. That's a critical book because he looked at the bottom line. He was a nuclear pathologist too. And really studied the scientific papers, and they were published that he based his work on. Those papers were published back in 1988. I mean, we're going back many years where our medical providers, which I'm part of, diabetic doctors, have totally missed the boat. Totally missed the boat. When I see the hospitals in town here with big hearts in the front, vascular disease, which is associated with diabetes, 98% of the time, you prevent diabetes, you don't get vascular disease, because insulin is the one that makes a hole in the intima of the blood vessels and starts a whole process that we have not acted on. This epidemic, pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, is shameful. It's shameful. It's like shooting our children. That's shameful. But not testing, proper testing on children as very young for blood sugars and serum insulins is condemning them, because they will have a shorter life They will have many years of disability. Their legs may be amputated. They may die of a sudden heart attack. A lot of children are diabetic as young children, and family doctors, pediatricians are not running the proper test. And Dr. Joseph Kraft, he said, well, I don't believe you, Rudy. Well, read this book. Once you read that book and you say, I don't believe you, well, we're going to have a discussion. Now, and I'll lead you to other books, many other books. Mark Hyman even has a handout on it. He's head of Wellness Clinic, for Pete's sake. I mean, I'd say he's that authority. Dr. Joel Furman, many other well-known physicians have written books and teach us. And especially Mark Hyman, when he's willing to, he sends you about 50 pages. You know what the name of that 50 pages are? How to speak to your doctor. Does that sound kind of like me? Yeah, I'd say. I'm trying to get things to change, but it's been difficult. The hospitals, I think, want to make money, because I went to all three of them. Or one of them to maybe build a clinic preventing, stopping, reversing diabetes. And they'll talk to you, but in the end, they're not interested. So I finally wrote a number of books which have names that really tell you. I have one here that isn't here, but it's called The Fraud of Diabetes. Mm-hmm. That's the name of it, because I think it's a fraud that we don't tell you how to avoid this disease, which makes you sick, die younger, causes disability, sudden loss of life from heart disease, 80% of renal disease. 80% of renal disease is from diabetes. Kidney disease is stages 1 through 5. People generally don't have symptoms till stage 3 or 4. They let you have the first 2. They check the GFR, glomerular filtration rate, should be checked in everyone. And if it's deteriorating, you may not have any symptoms, but we could turn your life around by saying, you know, you're diabetic. Let's do this, that, and the other, and you won't need to be dialyzed. You won't need new kidneys. But the kidney doctors are not leading this fight. Mm-hmm. They're not leading this fight. They're building dialysis center, kidney transplant centers, and those diseases can be avoided. What to do, to the point that I even decided to declare war on diabetes. So you see my book right here. Why did I do that? Well, my bullets are information. Information. Look at my YouTubes, about 500. You can go like this all day and see the previous shows that we did here about health. I was onto this years ago. This is nothing new for me. And I've declared war on the darn thing, because we need to, it would empty the hospitals, because people would not be getting kidney disease or vascular disease. Rates of cancer will go down, because like breast cancer, 60-70% is from diabetes, metabolism of sugar and fats in a person's body. Mm-hmm. Very Bradley doesn't point this out. They put all their money that they collect into gene research. Genes that express what occurs in your body account. There are probably 35 genes cause breast cancer. Mm-hmm. You're going to get 35 drugs. But if you eat properly, exercise properly, you won't get breast cancer to begin with. So I think we should keep some of the money here to teach people how to prevent, stop, and reverse diabetes. It was found by Dr. Jason Fung, and I want to talk about this a little bit. F-U-N-G, Jason Fung. He's from Canada. And it's very interesting. He used to be a kidney doctor. Remember, I spoke a lot about kidney disease? And he's on YouTube a lot, a new posting once a week. So look at Jason Fung YouTube and websites too. And what does he say in his cover? Prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes naturally. So what's he saying? Proper eating. is the main thing. And he's a lot into fasting. In other words, and I'm into that too, but I'm not talking about missing days or weeks or a year. Fasting, goes back in history. Even Jocelyn, the one who discovered the pancreas and the insulin, 1920s or so, he cured a lot of diabetics by fasting. Mm-hmm. And what I teach people is fasting 16-8, 16 hours of not eating, 8 hours eating. And what I've discovered, which Dr. Stephen Gundry, whose books I don't have here, but I got 10 of them at home, has come down to, if you do the fasting in the 16 hours, your body repairs itself. They have autophagia. Autophagia, cells repair themselves. New cells are produced. The body is cleansing itself of damaged cells. And then you ate in this 8-hour period, and what Dr. Gundry has really discovered. And I would prefer, though, at least you would eat one good meal a day, that it almost doesn't matter what you eat as long as you have this time-regulated eating, fasting. You're regulating this, and the best way to do it, let me show you the best way to do it, is not to eat breakfast. Mm-hmm. Eat lunch and breakfast together around that time. Doesn't have to be exact. Doesn't have to be 7 days a week, but 5 is fine. And then the next meal around 6 o'clock or 7 or so. And yes, and Gundry found out it almost doesn't matter what you're eating as long as you had that 16-hour time to fast. Mm-hmm. The body can fix itself. But what I do is I eat breakfast, lunch, noon or so, and I try to eat a fairly, what I consider a healthy meal, which is good fats, guacamole, peppers, eggs, MCT oil, coconut things like that. And I'll give you a name of a book that lists what the good fats are, but you can read about it in many books. I eat all I want. And the reason you don't get hungry in the mornings much, because around 5 o'clock, it's called circadian rhythm. Your body knows when morning is arriving and will secrete some adrenaline from the adrenal glands, some growth hormone from the hypothalamus pituitary area, some glucagon from the pancreas, which is the opposite of insulin, to keep your blood sugar up. Glucagon stimulates the liver to produce a little bit of sugar to keep your blood sugar up. So as long as your blood sugar is up, you're not hungry. Mm-hmm. I found that if you do some exercise every day, which is maybe 20% of good health, it ain't 80, I was thinking. About 20, but it would be good. I walk outside, whistle at the birds, or take a walk. Or like this morning, I played pickleball. I never did a darn thing. And then I had a healthy lunch at around noon or so, and now I'm doing the TV show. Now each night around 6, I'm going to have some coconut shrimp, and I'm looking forward to that already. But a real clue is time-regulated eating, because your own body keeps the blood sugar very steady, and it may take you a week or two to get used to it. It keeps a very steady blood sugar. And I do this, I've been doing it for quite a while, and my body weight is 135 day after day. Even if I ate a huge meal the next morning, I'm back at it again. Your body will regulate your metabolic system. It can if if I ate a little more, the body itself will increase the metabolism rate and eat up any extra calories I might have consumed. It won't do that forever, but it'll take care of it a few days a week. So you don't have to worry if you had a huge amount one day and not another. So the Dr. Jason Fong's book, he was a renal doctor. Mm-hmm. Kidneys is what but he noticed all the kidney patients he looked at were diabetic. He didn't know that. The diabetic doctors who taught him about, the renal doctors never brought it up. They're all diabetic. So he decided to become a diabetic doctor. And now you can see his stuff on YouTube. And he's big time into fasting. He may go more into, and there's a good chapter on fasting. Sometimes, eat one meal a day. Don't bother with that. I think the 16-8, which Gundry's talking about, remember, I take the best and leave the rest, okay? But I find this is an excellent book to read, Fong's Diabetic Code. He's written other books too on obesity and on cancer. Cancer is a sugar feeder. Cancer likes sugar. So he's written books on that, and they're excellent books. I have them at home. I read every done one of them. And I want you to look at his YouTube, because gather some information to get rid of diabetes out of your life, which isn't hard to do. About a month, if you're eating the right food, your sugar ain't going up, you'll get rid of it quickly. Not everyone, but 90% of them. Type 1 diabetes, where your pancreas is destroyed, you will need to take some insulin. But if you're eating right, you need to take a small amount of insulin, 10, 20 units. And what the beauty of that is, if you do that, you probably live to be 100. The trouble is today they have these insulin pumps that people have in their body, and they'll eat anything they want to, and then they'll check their blood sugar, and they say, oh, it's 200, and they'll calculate the insulin they take to bring it back down. Those people may live a little longer, but they're not going to lead a normal life. They'll die in their 50s and 60s instead of the 30s or 40s, okay? And also to get a gluten test, it can be important. It's a protein in the blood. We get it from eating wheat products. And about 10% of the people have gluten sensitivity, or some have celiac disease, where it's really a serious problem. They have and they tend to have type 1 diabetes because of autoimmune reaction. So, if you're type 1 diabetic, I did a gluten test, and Steve Gundry would say that especially because he talks a lot about lecithins and gluten, which is, those two are related, okay? And now suppose you have a relative or you yourself are way overweight. Remember I said you can be thin. Get the test done. 20% of people that are of normal weight have diabetes anyway. Mm-hmm. And the majority is type 2, where the blood sugar is up. Type 1, they have no insulin, okay? And a lot of them, they need insulin to live, but you want to take the smallest amount, because insulin does other things to the body. It makes the arteries stiff. It makes dementia, increased rates of cancer, because it stimulates a growth factor. Insulin causes increased rates of breast cancer because it increases the number of receptors in your ducts of your breast. That's the reason you want a normal weight if you much higher rate of breast cancer in overweight people. Mm-hmm. I wrote a book called Breast Cancer Prevention is the Cure. It's on Amazon. So, and not every case can be prevented, but the BRCA gene, which causes breast cancer, if you eat the right foods, you may prevent that gene from expressing itself. Very important. Let's look at this other book, Simply Keto, by Susan Ryan. I think this is an excellent, excellent book. First of all, she explains what ketone is all about. Let's take a few minutes here and speak about ketones now. Ketones, you've been hearing a lot about this lately, but there's some confusion out there. Okay, so you need to be informed. We have sugar molecules, okay? If, for example, you're eating good fats, not much sugar, your sugar level will go down, okay? And the insulin, which pushes sugar into the cell, okay, it goes down, and when it gets low enough, the fat cells open up, let fat out. Fat is carried to the liver, and the liver makes ketones, which are small molecules like sugar, except smaller. They can, and people used to think only glucose can be used in the brain. It can go through the blood-brain barrier. Ketones can do that too. Your brain can exist on 70% ketones, which are more energetic, actually more energetic, and because insulin is not pushing the sugar in the cells, the insulin degrading enzyme is not needed. See, when people are eating high sugary products, it can cause a lot of the dementia because they need the insulin degrading enzyme to break insulin apart because the level is so high. And then the IDE enzyme is also needed to take amyloid, a protein in the brain, to get rid of it. It can't break it down. So the amyloid goes up, neurofibrillary tangles go up, and is thought one is in the cells, one between the cells, and that's the reason so much memory loss and memory problems. They may call it Alzheimer's disease, but it really isn't. It's from diabetes. Most people with memory problems and brain problems, diabetes is really the problem. It's the biggest way to avoid that. Brain degenerative diseases is to get rid of diabetes. It's very important. Get rid of Alzheimer's. Remember we spoke about increased rates of cancer, renal disease, vascular disease, all related to type 2 diabetes, about 30, 40 diseases, thyroid disease. Most dental disease is from increased rate, from high sugar. Mm-hmm. Yeah, dentists aren't telling you, well, you kind of hint you a little bit, but most dental disease is due to sugar in the mouth, bacteria attacking it, and the bacteria remove the enamel in your teeth, and you have all these dental problems. And very important to know about dental care, even as a little child, as an infant. I noticed myself, no one ever said it to me. And my parents didn't bring it up. I didn't know it till I hit college that I realized I need to brush my teeth. Yeah, that happened to me. It's the way it was. But then I brushed my teeth once a day, and I still had cavities here and there. But when I started about 20 years ago, started brushing my teeth twice a day in the morning, and before I go to bed, I brush my teeth, use mouthwash. I've had very little dental problems. So brushing your teeth, it seems obvious to you. Many of you may be doing it, but I just want to remind you, sugar is the booger there, and it can cause dementia, dental disease, thyroid disease, heart disease, strokes. A lot of people with diabetes and heart disease just grab their chest and they die. 50% of heart attacks are sudden, unannounced death. No warning. Mm-hmm. And I already mentioned cancer's a sugar feeder. Otto Warburg discovered the science of that in 1928. Got the Nobel Prize for Medicine. For that, it takes 30 molecules of sugar to feed the cancer to make 1 ATP. Now they find out the virus that's killing the people across the world, and expect 1 million in this country. The virus is a sugar feeder. The virus is a non-living thing. I bet you didn't know it. I hardly meet anybody knows it. A virus is a non-living thing. It needs to enter an animal or a human cell and steal sugar and fatty acids. It hits the receptor on the cell, enters the cell, steals sugar and fatty acids to make its membrane to multiply. Okay, the covering on cells are made from fats. And so the sugar, fatty acids, steals some genetic material. That's why it's mutating all the time. You hear about the Omicron and the different mutations of viruses. To my surprise, Republicans, Democrats, head of public health did not tell us that the virus is a sugar feeder, because 90% of the people that died in New York were diabetic. Mm-hmm. Get rid of your diabetes, odds of catching or dying from the virus goes down. Not to zero, but it goes down. So it's kind of really an important thing to let you know. And there will be future viruses. This is not the last virus. This one isn't gone yet. And there will be more in the future, which will spread across the world. So to teach people how to stop, prevent, reverse diabetes is critical. Many more people will die from diabetes than the virus. I'm for vaccination. I've had all 4 vaccines. I haven't caught the virus. Doesn't mean that I can't. But I'm not exactly totally hidden from the public. Okay? So to become healthy and get the blood sugar down will help you prevent the viruses now and in the future, and keep you from spreading it to your children and neighbors and friends and around the world. So this book by Susan Ryan, Simply Keto, has 30 pages of explaining what keto is all about. I explained to you already, emailed it, so it's very good. And then her book has wonderful recipes, breakfast, lunch, dinner, desserts, appetizers. Fantastic book. She lost 120 pounds and her diabetes went away. So I encourage you, even if you don't have a big weight problem, you might consider this book, because she explains keto, has the recipes. If you were to cook out of this, you're just a diabetic, you were to cook out of there, you'd have no diabetes in 2 to 4 weeks, I would say 90% of the time. So to stop, prevent, reverse diabetes, not hard. That's the good news. But not to take advantage of it, that's sad. A lot of people would rather have the disease, take the medicine, get their legs amputated, get dementia, get heart disease, get diabetes, and could be a lot of the time it was never explained to them. That's what I did today. Watch my other shows. You can go on YouTube. I have an unending number of shows you can watch. I do this every 2 weeks just on diabetes because I love you. That's why I do it. And so gather information. My bullets are information. I care about you. Thanks for watching. Namaste. Bye-bye.